say that I am so thrilled and excited to see what God has done with all of our young people and you, and what God has done with each of you.
As you've matured in ministry and grown up, I think often of another sermon I heard my father preach when I was about 9 or 10, and it's alone we cannot do it, but together we can take the city for Jesus. And you remind me of that because I see in you the interdependence of the body of Christ, the willingness to collaborate and link arms. And one of the ways that you've been doing that recently is in a prayer movement here in the city called God Belongs in My City. What is God Belongs in My City, and why is that so significant?
God Belongs in My City, if I had to personally describe it, it's a personal declaration of young people in New York City, and not only young people, just the church coming together and declaring that God belongs in our city. God belongs here, and we need to pray, and we need to stand together and be the church as one and represent that. And it came together so quickly in a matter of 2 weeks. You know, they had something like 1,500 young people marching to Times Square to pray and to believe and declare with their lives that God belongs in this city. And it's just offset into so many great ministries that it's become something that's more than just praying, but now we're acting. We're acting on our prayers, and we're going to be the change that we want to see in this city.
One of the things I appreciate about God Belongs in My City is it's not just a call to prayer, but it's a call to action. And as that call has matured, the focus of one of those expressions has become schools. I Am My School. And what is I Am My School?
I Am My School is again, one of these kind of action steps of the God Belongs in My City movement. And it's churches consciously adopting schools in their neighborhood and making it a point to not only stand and pray for them, but to connect with them along with 2020 Vision and to really see that school. You know, there are 1.1 million students in New York City public schools, so it's so important that churches consider those schools and consider them important and take their time and pray for them, and also make it a point to be active in those schools, knowing the principal, knowing some of the teachers. And we're so fortunate as a church that we've been able to not only, beyond I Am My School, work with 2020 Vision to adopt PS 34 and just see the change that's happened in that school, seeing the graduations improve, seeing the test scores go up. And I really believe that that's been us standing there, praying for them, being there with them, having teachers inside of the school. So it's been an incredible move of God.
One of the things I like about I Am My School is that statement is in itself a prayer, right?
Yes.
I am is the name God calls himself. And so to say I am my school, it's a prayer, but it's a prayer that we identify with in terms of the willingness to become an answer to that prayer. Mm-hmm. I will identify that the school becomes who I've created it to be. Enid, when you were at Excel, really pioneered a lot of the attempts by Abounding Grace to connect more formally with PS 34, which interestingly enough was one of your schools as a middle schooler. But what did that look like, and what were some of the challenges of really engaging that relationship successfully?
Well, the location of Generation XL was right across the street from the school, and so naturally, 95%, very high percentage of our young people came from that school. And so one of the things that we tried to do really is provide academic intervention. So we would ask for report cards, and we had some parents that were very, very helpful, and some that could have been more helpful. And so we decided, what better way to, again, get to the bottom of really the need that these kids have than to work with their teachers. And so what our staff started doing is started going to the parent-teacher conferences, and I would go meet the teachers and say, hey, we're the after-school coordinators. We know that, you see a need with this, particular young person. What could we do to support? And gave them our phone numbers and let them know that we were there to support them in case they needed anything. And so eventually the principal got wind of that, and after various attempts, I actually got the opportunity to sit down with her and share with her our vision, really not to proselytize, not to brainwash the young people, but just to love on them and really to come alongside them and be that answer to prayer. We were blessed that actually she was a Christian, so she was a lot more open to hearing, because again, there might have been some tension considering our connection, with the church. And so again, once we sat down and we began those inroads, again, and that understanding and that communication, that really helped greatly. But it really didn't come until we showed that we meant business by, you know, being visible, by following up, by working with the teachers.
The youth director at the time at Abounding Grace in 2005 inspired what became 2020 Vision for Schools when he determined to expand his youth ministry by working as a math teacher, a middle school math teacher at PS 34. And when that happened, to see the relationship blossom changed the paradigm for a lot of us in terms of how communities, stakeholders, including churches, can become answers to prayers at the school. On that note, I want to welcome our next guest, Pastor Paul Curtis. Pastor Paul is the pastor of Crossroads Christian Church in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. And Pastor Paul came to Brooklyn. He's a transplant from Arizona, but he came with a heart to incarnate the gospel and to live out the kind of abounding grace we're talking about right there in Brooklyn. Welcome, Pastor Paul.
Thanks.
If you could share a little bit of what motivated that decision to come to New York 15 or so years ago.
You know, I grew up in a home where it's the rest of my neighborhood, all the dads got together and did drugs, and the moms tried to keep things together and that sort of thing. And for me, the only reason why I know Jesus, it wasn't an abounding grace necessarily or a Generation Excel, is because there was one Christian family who loved Jesus enough that they saw this kid that was a friend of their son, and they took me in. They took me into their home. I went on vacation with them at times. They let me come in. I took food out of their fridge. I became one of their own, like one of their family. And I don't remember a single Bible study. I don't remember a single sermon that this family preached other than the one that they lived out. And so that was from 3rd grade till about middle school sometime. They began inviting me to go to church camp and to youth events and that sort of thing. And when I began hearing about the gospel, it was like I got it immediately because I'd seen it lived out for so long. And during that time, God, even as a young age, had put on my heart the desire to be involved in helping other people experience His mercy and His grace and His love. And so I kind of went from went studying commercial art at Ohio State to going to Cincinnati Christian University just to study ministry and the Bible, and came to New York City on a class trip and absolutely fell in love with the city and knew that God was calling. To be honest, I don't know how else to put it but to say that there was a call. I now know that there are tons of reasons why New York City is one of the greatest places to minister, but it began with a call from God in 1993, 92. Yeah.
And so you and your wife relocated and determined to live that call in a very incarnational, missional way. Why was that so vital to you?
Well, partly because that's how I came to know Jesus. You know, I came to know Him because people lived it out in my life. Our first ministry, we came with the desire for church planting from the beginning, but our first opportunity and kind of the way I was given the opportunity to do church planting in New Jersey, like as a youth pastor, or I could come and work with a storefront ministry off of Times Square, a place called Love Mission that worked with the homeless. And so I decided that's where I was going to learn how to minister to people in the city. And so that's what we did when we first came. And I think I learned more in that first year of ministry than maybe all the others combined on how to be Jesus to the people around us. Because we ministered, this is in the early 90s, we ministered to the drug dealers and the homeless in the parks. And so yeah, the reason why was mostly because that's how I came to know Jesus. I don't know if there's another way to teach people about Jesus. They've got to hear, they have to hear. But hearing is nothing unless they've seen it in action.
And so when you did decide to plant a church, and you determined to plant in Brooklyn and become part of a neighborhood, you made that decision to live out the kind of faith, hope, and love that the gospel represents. What are some of the ways that your church has been actively living missional lives in Bay Ridge?
Yeah. we've made lots of mistakes, and we certainly didn't have it together, or even all of our theology, I don't think it's changed, and our philosophy of ministry has changed. But from the beginning, we had a budget for spending time in the community, like coaching soccer or playing volleyball at the Y or that sort of thing. But most recently, about four or 5 years ago, we started a ministry called The Storefront, and it's just an art center, not a Christian art center necessarily, although most of the people who serve in it are Christians, followers of Jesus who come to Crossroads. And we just allow the people in our church who to do with people in our community doing the things they love to do. And we do have people who've come to Crossroads and come to Christ because of that connection in the community. But at the center of it is a chance for us to be Jesus to the people in our community.
And so as you were living that out, and after starting the Storefront and being engaged in the art scene there in Brooklyn, you heard about this idea that called 2020 Vision for Schools, that there's room for people of faith to engage issues of education reform in New York, and that seemed to resonate with you. What about that was so important to Crossroads, and more specifically to you as the pastor and shepherd of Crossroads?
Mm-hmm. I've loved hearing these guys talk because I feel like I've gotten swept up into a movement of grace that God has been doing. And there was a moment where you actually shared with me about this idea of 2020 vision. And my son has a God Belongs in My City t-shirt. And we went on the prayer walk, the I Am My School prayer walk, where we walked from about 4, 5, 6 different schools in our neighborhood and just began praying for them, praying, God, first bring your blessing, and then how can we be that blessing to the community? And I think what caught my heart most was that it was the opportunity for the church to come in and serve people where they were, rather than saying, come to us and we'll fix you, or, so we were really coming alongside the school saying, you have desires for your students that are godly, and we want to come alongside you and be a part of the solution that you long for, because that's what Jesus did. The need was there, and Jesus came and met that need.
So engaging the school began with the prayer walk, but it didn't stop at a prayer walk.
No, we had a series of messages that we kind of took our Sunday service and focused on this issue for a while, and throughout that time we spoke about the issues. We preached about God's call on the church to be a part of its community, to be a part of ministering to the needs in its community. And we also had a panel. We had students on the panel, administrators on the panel, teachers on the panel, and we talked with them about what the needs in the school were and how they saw God opening up doors in the school, or in the schools. And then after that, we began praying about what God might want to do through us in the schools. And we're connected in the schools, not because we've worked really hard, but because we have kids in schools, and we have parents in schools, and we have teachers in schools. And then there came this moment, as you know, where we had the opportunity to, can I kind of go into that? We had the opportunity to do something for a school that already saw the need. They had kids of, I don't know, different languages. And at the beginning of their school year, they wanted to make sure that every kid was welcome in that school. And so parents would walk in and they would see the signs saying welcome, and it would be in every language. And so welcome in their language was there. And we had the opportunity, and you were a big part of that, where we went to the school and said, is it possible for us to be able to help you welcome those students in a big way? And the opportunity for a mural that was over 800 square feet of mural space, where we painted welcome in all those different languages and created a picture that invited people into that school. And we just came alongside. They recognized the need, they wanted to do that, and we came alongside and partnered with them.
And what's amazing is their need happened to match your preparedness.
Yeah.
Right, of all the things that they might want to do in terms of creating a public art piece that welcomed students, coincided directly with what you were doing incarnationally already through the Storefront. Can you describe the process by which the mural unfolded? We've got photos and some video that are showing visually the story that you're telling, and so it'd be really interesting for you to share what the process was like of actually engaging the school in such a way where it matured into this 875 square foot mural in a schoolyard.